Welcome, my friends. I'm so grateful you chose to spend these minutes with me on English Heritale. Think back to a moment when you had to choose between what was easy and what was right. Most of those moments are small, a small lie avoided, a small shortcut not taken. But every now and then, in the long history of human beings, someone has faced that same choice on the largest possible stage, with the largest possible cost. A king on one side, their own conscience on the other, and nothing in between to protect them. Today on English Heritale, we tell the story of a man who faced exactly that choice. A lawyer, a writer, a father, a friend to kings. A man so respected for his integrity that even the people who eventually killed him admitted privately that they had never met anyone quite like him. His name was Thomas More. So find a comfortable place, take a slow breath, and let the story begin. The year was 1478. The place was London, England. Thomas More was born into a world ruled by king and church together, where the two were so tightly woven that most people could not imagine pulling them apart. His father was a successful lawyer, and from a young age, Thomas showed the kind of mind that made adults stop and pay attention. Sharp, curious, endlessly hungry for books. As a boy, he was sent to serve in the household of a powerful archbishop, a common practice for promising young men of the time, a way of learning manners, Latin, and the workings of power up close. The archbishop is said to have remarked, watching this boy serve at table while somehow also absorbing every conversation around him, that whoever lived to see it would find this child become a remarkable man. More went on to study at Oxford, then trained as a lawyer in London, and quickly became known not just for his legal mind, but for something rarer. Wit, genuine, sparkling wit, paired with a kind of gentleness that made people trust him instantly. He wrote, he joked, he corresponded with the greatest scholars in Europe. One of his closest friends was Erasmus, the most famous intellectual of the age, who once wrote that nature had never created anything gentler, sweeter, or happier than the mind of Thomas More. In 1516, More published a book that would outlive him by 5 centuries. He called it Utopia, a word he invented himself from Greek, meaning roughly no place. It described an imaginary island society, organized completely differently from the England More lived in. No private property, religious tolerance, shared work and shared reward. Was More seriously proposing this society? Scholars still argue about it. Some of it reads as a genuine vision of a better world. Some of it reads as sharp satire, mocking the very idea that any society could be perfect. That tension between idealism and irony, between hope and doubt, was very much who More was. A man who could imagine a perfect world while living, very practically, inside an imperfect one. The book made him famous across Europe, and fame in More's England had a way of finding its way directly to the king. King Henry VIII was young, brilliant, charming, and dangerously used to getting his way. He admired More enormously, valued his intelligence, his honesty, his refusal to simply flatter power the way so many courtiers did. Henry pulled More steadily into royal service, ambassador, advisor. Eventually, in 1529, Henry appointed More to the highest legal position in England, Lord Chancellor, the king's closest advisor on matters of law and justice. For a while, it must have felt like the natural reward for a life of honest service. But Henry had a problem. He wanted a son to secure his throne, and his wife, Catherine of Aragon, had not given him one. He wanted to set Catherine aside and marry a woman named Anne Boleyn, and the Pope in Rome would not grant him permission. So Henry decided to solve the problem a different way. He broke from the Catholic Church entirely. He declared himself the supreme head of a new Church of England, answerable to no pope, no Rome, no authority above his own throne. Every official in England was required to sign an oath recognizing this, recognizing Henry's new marriage, recognizing his break from Rome as legitimate and final. This was the moment everything in More's life had been quietly building toward, though he could not have known it. More resigned as Lord Chancellor rather than support the king's divorce, stepping back from public life as quietly as he could manage, hoping silence might be enough to protect him. He did not publicly attack the king. He did not preach against him from any pulpit. He simply would not sign the oath. And when pressed for his reasons, he said almost nothing at all, understanding that in the eyes of the law, silence could not easily be called treason. For a time, this strategy worked. Henry, for all his fury, hesitated to move against a man so widely respected, a former friend whose integrity was known across Europe. But the king's advisors kept pressing, and eventually More was summoned, questioned, and finally imprisoned in the Tower of London for refusing to take the oath. He spent over a year in that tower. His family visited him, his beloved daughter Margaret most of all, the child he had personally educated to a level of learning almost unheard of for a woman in that era. In an age that rarely thought women's minds were worth the trouble, she begged him, more than once, to simply sign the oath, to say the words, to save his life. He gently refused her every time, explaining that he could not put his soul in danger for the sake of this world, however much he loved her, however much he loved his life. In 1535, More was put on trial for treason. The case against him was thin. Silence alone was not, under any honest reading of English law, proof of disloyalty. So the Crown found a witness, a man named Richard Rich, who claimed More had confessed treasonous opinions to him privately. Most historians today believe Rich lied. The jury, handpicked and under enormous pressure, took only minutes to convict him. Before sentencing, More finally spoke the words he had withheld for years, no longer needing to protect himself, since protection was no longer possible. He stated plainly that no temporal ruler could be the supreme head of the church, that this authority belonged to Rome alone, and that he would not betray his conscience to save his life. He was sentenced to death. On the scaffold, on July 6, 1535, More remained, by every account from those who witnessed it, remarkably calm. He is said to have told the executioner to wait until he moved his beard, joking quietly that his beard, at least, had committed no treason. He declared that he died the king's good servant, but God's first. Then it was finished. And here, my friends, is where the story leaves us, and where I want to sit with you for one quiet moment. Henry got everything he wanted that day: his divorce, his new church, his throne secured exactly as he had planned. But history has rendered its own quiet verdict since. 400 years later, the Catholic Church declared Thomas More a saint. Centuries of writers, playwrights, and filmmakers have returned again and again to his story, most famously in a play and film called A Man for All Seasons, because something about his stand, the simple, stubborn refusal to say words he did not believe, has never stopped feeling urgent. What is the lesson we carry from this story? Perhaps it is this: More was not a rebel by nature. He loved his king, served him loyally for decades, and tried every quiet, careful strategy available to avoid open conflict. He did not seek martyrdom. He nearly avoided it entirely. But when the moment finally arrived, when there was truly no room left between what was asked of him and what he believed, he chose the harder path. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, almost gently, the way he had lived his entire life. And for you, my friend, listening to this story today, there is something here that belongs to your English journey too. Most days, learning a language does not ask anything dramatic of you. It asks for something smaller and steadier: showing up, choosing the harder, more honest sentence instead of the easy shortcut, staying true to the slow, careful work even when no one is watching and nothing forces you to. Thank you for walking through this story with me today on English Heritale. If this journey touched something in you, leave a comment and tell me which part of Thomas More's story stayed with you the most. Share it with a friend who is also learning English, and come back for the next story, because the journey continues, and I will be here waiting for you.